Let's not panic right now. Let's look ahead at the schedule. The Mets have 13 games left. Right now, at this moment, they're 9-4 in September. They have 13 games left to play winning baseball. You're telling me a team that has one of the best records in baseball since June can't continue to play up to that rate?
There is a math, and I think it's pretty simple. You got 13 games remaining, 3 with the Nationals at home, 4 at home with the Phillies, 3 in Atlanta, 3 in Milwaukee. You get through this National Series, you try to get to 89 wins. I think that can get the Mets in. Of course, they have to have success in Atlanta, but there are reasons to believe why that's going to happen. The starting pitching has been and remains a constant. Another great outing for Jose Quintana. Another great outing for David Peterson. Francisco Alvarez continues to swing a hot bat. The Mets thought they saw something in him, and it's coming to life. He hits the big 3-run home run on Friday in Philly. The Mets can absolutely bounce back. It starts on Monday against the Nationals. You take care of business there. You take care of business with the Phillies. You go to Atlanta. You get to 89 victories. That is the road ahead for them.
Hey, thanks for meeting us at the Apple. I'm Vito Calisi. You can follow me on Twitter at Vito Ev Calisi. That's Jonathan Barron on Twitter at JMB9191. And just, let's be honest, pretty tough pair of losses after a really fun game Friday night, right, John?
Yeah, I mean, a very up and down weekend, I think is the way I describe it. Dude, there have been some really fun victories the Mets have had down the turnpike at Citizens Bank Park. There really have been. The Cana game a couple years ago and
the comeback in 22.
Exactly. Yep. There's been a lot of them, but there's also been some miserable afternoons. I was at one back in 07. It was August of 07, that weekend where I think game 2, Marlon Anderson had ended with him being called out for being out of the baseline. And then the last game, I believe Billy Wagner gave it up to Jason Worth or Chase Utley. And it was a miserable time getting out of that place, being a Met fan. I'm sure it was no different this weekend, but yeah, just a very tough weekend. And you bring into the week with you a bitter taste because of the way it ended. It'd be a lot different if the Mets lost games 1 and 2, and then one on Sunday.
And I was at the watch party on Friday night that the Mets hosted at Gramercy Ale House, and the vibes are great. There were a ton of fans there, Mr. and Mrs. Met. I was talking to Edgardo Alfonso a lot about he had Pete and Mark Vientos in Brooklyn when he was the manager over there. So we were just having some great conversations, and Friday night, everything was great. Like you said, it's just if you flip-flop, if you would have turned that into a Sunday afternoon watch party where the Mets win, you're feeling so different. We're going into this episode so differently, but just, we've done a few of these before. We've done a few of these where the Mets won the first 2 and then lost the third one. And then it just, it's a crummy way to end a weekend.
Yeah, it is. But look, here's the thing. I know that Mets fans waking up on Monday, we're doing this obviously before the Braves game starts. So the worst case scenario, Vito, is the Mets wake up Monday morning and they're 1 game back of a team that they have 3 games head to head with, not too far down the line from now. And if the Mets can get some help from the Dodgers, then they wake up even Steven once again with the Atlanta Braves going into the final 13 games with 3 games ahead of that team. So, we're all going to wear this one on the chin tonight. Every Met fan had their day kind of ruined around, 4 o'clock. If you're a Jets fan, it was a little salvaged a little bit, but there's still obviously
for a second it was pretty bad though.
Vito, you want to talk about, for the Jets Mets fans out there listening, we know there are plenty of you guys. The feelings of 2007, 2008, a bad Mets loss on a Sunday, and then you get out of Shea Stadium or you flip over the channel and the Jets let one slip away, and it's just an all-around disaster.
I had the
we know that feeling.
I had the iPad going on my counter and the TV up, and it literally the Mets gave up the lead, and then I looked over at my iPad, and it looked like the Jets were about to give up the lead, and I was just like, oh, God, it's going to be a day like this. It just feels like another one of those September Sundays where, as a Mets-Jets fan, you feel like nothing can go right, but we are the most positive Mets fans you can find outside of maybe a certain guy in WFAN named Positive Tommy. He's the other guy writing the ship for Mets fans. But sometimes even we just, you take a punch in the gut and you don't feel that good, but you look ahead. And like John said, the worst thing in the world that could happen tonight is the Mets are a game behind the Braves.
Yeah, that's it. I also want to say, before we get too far away, Sunday was a crazy day for screens. I felt like I didn't have enough screens to watch all the action. You have the Jets and Giants both happening at 1 o'clock. The Mets starting at 1:35. I'm in a household here with Yankees fans.
Yeah,
So you
Yankees
got
game was 1:35 as well. Same exact start time,
exactly.
right?
And then you got the red zone. Then you got all your fantasy and whatever extracurriculars you may or may not be into, and you're watching the red zone, and that's a must watch on a Sunday. I mean, that is literally 5 screens needed. So I had my laptop, I had the iPad, brought in a brother-in-law's iPad. So there were a lot of screens out today. There wasn't a lot of room for the snacks on the table, which I found my mother-in-law had a little we didn't necessarily agree on how the real estate should be spent on the coffee table,
You
but
thought it should be all screens on the coffee table?
I mean, I can't watch the game if it's on
No,
top of like a
I
fireplace.
agree with you. I mean, like, the
Yeah,
screens are what matters at that point, but I feel like
100%.
your house is probably set up like a Buffalo Wild Wings on a Sunday.
Well, it's not my house, but I do
The
figure
place
out
where you reside is probably set up
yes.
like a Buffalo Wild Wings on a Sunday with screens everywhere.
I'm definitely armed and ready to roll out all the screens I can. If I have to get the cell phone involved, if we have a fourth must-watch event or a fifth or a sixth or whatever it is, I got that.
You
So
gotta
I
do
was
what I
watching it
did,
all
dude.
today. It was an up
I
and down day.
I bought a mount for my iPad that has like a swivel arm on it, so I can attach that to my side table, and then I have that like basically right to my side near my face, and then I have the TV up in front of me.
I love that. Send me the Amazon link for that, please.
I will, but we need to talk about the Mets, and we need to talk about the road ahead because Mets fans, I said last week, never panic, babes. John, you weren't here for that episode, but I did say those 3 words to start off the last episode. And I'm going to say it again. Let's not panic right now. Let's look ahead at the schedule. The Mets have 13 games left. Right now, at this moment, they're 9-4 in September. They have 13 games left to play winning baseball. You're telling me a team that's 9-4 in September so far has played some really good baseball, has one of the best records in baseball since June, can't continue to play up to that rate?
There is a math, and I think it's pretty simple. You got 13 games remaining, 3 with the Nationals at home, 4 at home with the Phillies, 3 in Atlanta, 3 in Milwaukee. You get through this National Series, you try to get to 89 wins. I think that can get the Mets in. Of course, they have to have success in Atlanta, but there are reasons to believe why that's going to happen. The starting pitching has been and remains a constant. Another great outing for Jose Quintana, another great outing for David Peterson. Francisco Alvarez continues to swing a hot bat. The Mets thought they saw something in him, and it's coming to life. He hits the big 3-run home run on Friday in Philly. The Mets can absolutely bounce back. It starts on Monday against the Nationals. The team is going to travel back from Philadelphia. They may already be back in New York at this point. We don't, that's very possible. Although traffic on a Sunday, I'm not so
Sunday
sure.
traffic, like one nice weekend of weather left. I don't know. That might be rough.
You might be right, but regardless, they're going to come back. They're going to be at Citi Field tomorrow, and this one's going to be behind them. And we know that. We could tell you guys that's a fact because the Mets have proven that time and time again this season. Their ability to have the short memory, bounce back the next day. So they're welcoming the Nats to town, 3-game series. A team the Mets have really had a lot of success against all season. They have to do it again. And then you have the Phillies come to town, Vito. And you and I talked on the phone shortly after the game ended, talking a little bit about what we're going to do here on the show. And I said to you, and I feel this way, the Mets were in they were leading all of these games.
Yeah.
The Mets could have left Philadelphia with a 3-game sweep. I know things happen. It's a good team, a good lineup. It's a reason that they're probably going to win the National League East this year. But still, the Mets went toe-to-toe with that Phillies team who then comes to your house for 4 games. So, the path forward is very clear. It's a team that we've seen rebound, and they're going to have to do it again. It's that simple.
Yeah, it's a really big week. John, we're talking about that Nats series coming up. And one thing to remember is the Nats were the team that the Mets started that hot streak against. That sweep they had against the Nationals back in the beginning of June was really the early signs of like, hey, this Mets team might be able to turn stuff around and really compete going forward. And there's a lot of question marks right now. Look, at this moment, Francisco Lindor in the morning, he will be going in for his MRI. Obviously, that puts a big question mark on what's happening right now. But, Luis Angel Acuna look, Francisco Lindor not in that lineup is obviously a gigantic hole. We're not going to pretend like that doesn't make a big difference in this team. But you have to look at what Luis Angel Acuna was able to do, come up and get on base and make things happen. And like as a Mets fan, you're holding on to hope right now. You have to look at that as just a simple positive in itself, right?
Yeah, made a good defensive play also on Sunday. So a couple knocks in his big league debut. And, as far as Lindor goes, I mentioned the Nats and I mentioned the Phillies. You come out of that in decent shape, you're going into Atlanta. And, it looks like, I think at this point you can say, because as we mentioned, you're either going to be one game back or tied in the standings on Monday morning. That Brave series could very possibly make or break this season and be the 3 games. So while each game that you play as you go along on this journey feels like the biggest game, there's a bigger game that comes in succession of that. And we're going to have that when the Mets are in Atlanta.
Yeah.
The Twitter reaction and just all the emotions that go into watching a game. This was a very emotional weekend for all of us Mets fans watching these 3 games in Philadelphia. It's going to get bigger. And that's awesome, right, Vito?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we watch baseball for. We watch it for those gigantic series that feel like playoffs in September. I mean, going into that Brave series in 2022, it ended badly, but going into it, you were excited. I mean, John, we were at a watch party for that game. Like, we were looking forward to it. So it's just, we've said all season, we've said the past month or two leading up to this month, like September was going to be hold on to your butts month. And we said over and over again, there's like so many benchmarks on this season where like it's going to come down to this. And like you said, when you have a 3-game series against the team that you're battling for one of those wild card spots with, that's what it's going to come down to. But you still got to do business against the Nationals and the Phillies, like that the Mets need to do business this week. They have to show up. And I think they will, because it's a team that showed up when they absolutely needed to, and really bounced back from tough losses. So I feel good about this week.
Of course they're going to bounce back. Look, there are some constants with this Mets team that I think that some people didn't believe in and maybe you're starting to finally come around on. One of those is David Peterson, who put forth another tremendous effort on Sunday afternoon. 7 2/3 innings of 1-run ball, 11 ground balls for David Peterson. Vito, you texted me on Saturday saying it was going to be a bad day to be a worm in Philadelphia. And it turned out being the case. He was dominant once again with the ground balls, and he had 6 strikeouts to add. So he gets 15 of his outs right there in
A
dominating.
huge ground out in the 8th inning. Like, look, after he gave up the run, that ground out he got in the 8th inning was everything in that game, because at that point the Mets really, that kept the Mets in the game.
Yep, against a really good hitter there in Kyle Schwarber. So he was great. And Jose Quintana on Friday night, who has now allowed no runs in 3 of his last 4 starts overall, going back to his outing in San Diego. The outing before that was against the Orioles, where he didn't have as much success, and people were wondering if he was even going to stay in the rotation moving forward. And Jose's been great. So, the Mets are throwing quality starting pitcher after quality starting pitcher. Obviously, the Francisco Lindor situation, the injury, we're all going to have to wait and see how it plays itself out. But Francisco did not play on Saturday. The Mets put up 4 runs early. He didn't play on Sunday. The Mets still put themselves in a position to win. So we'll see what the MRI reveals. Francisco said that he'd be having an MRI on Monday. We'll see what that reveals. And, we'll go from there. I know it's not the answer everyone wants.
2 days in a row, this team was just a few feet away from tying or winning the game on a JD Martinez
the Cal Stevenson catch.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking. Those 2 the JD Martinez two times this weekend. Well, no, JD 3 times, but there were 2 big moments in this series where JD Martinez looked like he was just so close. And I feel like something we've seen this year with the Mets is like when Francisco Alvarez was struggling and it looked like he was just coming short. That's when he had to walk off against the Orioles. So we're seeing guys who are just almost there. I mean, like those JD Martinez shots were like straightaway dead center, right?
Yeah, they were. Also, the play that Bryce Harper made in the 8th inning on Sunday when Pete Alonso laced what looked like it was going to be a base hit to the outfield with Harrison Bader on second and 2 outs. Bader was going to score on Nick Castellanos there, and Bryce just gets enough leather to keep the ball from going into the outfield, and the Mets don't score. That's another killer play that you're literally talking about centimeters, the difference being a run, an insurance run, and not getting that insurance run. So, there's moments like that you can just get sick over, honestly. But you mentioned Francisco Alvarez, Vito, and I want to shout out Andy Martino, who tweeted this right before the game, I think on Wednesday in Toronto, saying that explaining why Alvarez was playing again. It had been a day after a night game. And so it would have made sense that Luis Torrens got the start. And Andy did some investigating. He did some talking, had some conversations. And, you know, turns out that the Mets were seeing something in Alvarez's swing that they thought was indicating he was close to being back. And then he hits the 3-run homer in Toronto. And then he hits the big go ahead, break the ice 3-run home run on Friday night off the foul pole. He just looks a lot more hitterish. And right now, especially with Francisco Lindor's back and the situation being what it is, if the Mets can get Francisco Alvarez's bat, we know what kind of a hitter this guy can be, Vito.
Yeah, and it's just frustrating because you're looking at a team of guys who looks like they're right there, right about to break through, and like what a time to play the Nationals. And hopefully, look, what you hope is that like the early June when the Mets got hot against the Nationals and went on, you hope that the Mets can get hot against the Nationals in the beginning of the week and let that drive them to a just gigantic 4-game series versus the Phillies. And the Mets play good on weekends, man. We've seen Friday nights in this ballpark.
We've seen Friday nights in this ballpark. The weekend's going to be awesome. I've been looking forward to it since last weekend because we know how exciting and how fun and how energetic and how hostile that Citi Field crowd can be. And we know it's going to be like that for one last time, which is absolutely crazy to say, crazy to think that we are entering our last homestand of the season. I mean, the season has flown by, and I've seen a lot of people say this online the last couple days. And I could probably say this till, whenever that final day is, whether it's a couple weeks or, 4 weeks, 5 weeks from now. But it has just been such an incredibly fun season. And we've had so many moments, both good and bad, but moments that we truly care about. And that's awesome. That's why we do this. That's why it's fun. It's great to get to talk about these things. And it's great to root for a team that we know when it gets punched in the face is going to get back up. And we can expect this Mets team to do that once again, starting on Monday against the Nationals.
I want to bring it up because this loss feels so tough. But remember how bad you felt on that Sunday where they gave up the lead against the Padres. Remember how bad you felt that day. And remember what Brandon Nimmo said about sometimes you get kicked in the A word and you go back out there and you fight. And I think we're going to see that tomorrow night, or when you're listening to this, you're going to see that tonight against the Nationals. You got Sean Manaea in the mound, who's been the Mets ace this year, and it's just a perfect time to turn the cards around, like right the ship. Let's do business this week, boys. It's the Nationals. It's a NL East rival. Like I said a second ago, let's get hot against the Nationals and continue against the Phillies. And fans, you got to show up. We got to see you at the ballpark. We got to hear you making noise because you saw Phillies fans in the ballpark this weekend. Makes a big difference.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I know the 7 line was out there at Citizens Bank Park on Saturday. So, yeah, we're excited to see everyone at Citi Field. The Nationals, by the way, this is going to be the first time the Mets see Dylan Cruz, who was one of the best prospects in baseball, came up right before Labor Day. I believe he made his debut against the Yankees when they were there in Washington, D.C., and he's been the goods. So between him and James Wood, who continues to really impress, hit a bomb of a home run on Sunday against the Marlins. The Nats are throwing Jake Irvin at the Mets. They'll be throwing DJ Hers at the Mets on Wednesday. So it's going to be look, there's no gimmies. And we keep saying this and people keep asking, oh, well, strength of schedule. It doesn't matter. The Braves lost to the Reds last Monday. The Braves are going to go to Cincinnati after they're done with the Dodgers. The Astros just got swept in a 2-game series in Cincinnati right before they came to Citi Field, the Reds did. So it just beat the team that's in front of you.
John, it's like you brought up the phone call we had right before this. And on that phone call, we were talking about how fans were panicked after the Mets lost to the A's. The A's are one of the hottest teams in baseball since before that happened. They came into that series as one of the hottest teams in baseball. And the Nationals are right now at this moment are pretty damn hot. I'm not saying that's any excuse. I'm not saying that means the Mets are going to lose or I'm making excuses before it happens. I'm just saying this is not going to be some gimme games. You got to get to the ballpark because these are going to be highly competitive, high leverage baseball games.
They are. And I can't wait to watch more of it because I'm addicted to it. I get what JD Martinez was talking about. I know he said addicted to playoff baseball, but just the thought of playoff baseball has us all going insane.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's a good thing.
And let's give a mention to Tyler McGill because you weren't on the last episode, so we didn't get to talk about it. Tyler McGill is going Tuesday night Tyler McGill has earned his spot in the rotation for this period with Paul Blackburn being out. Tyler McGill showed up and was the most dominant guy of our rotation against the Blue Jays.
Oh, you gotta ask our colleagues Brendan, Jenna, Corey, and Mike about Tyler McGill in San Francisco. Just ask him that. Just ask them that. They'll tell you. I was letting the fine people of San Francisco know about Tyler McGill after he went out there and dominated the Blue Jays.
Was that during Monday Night Football? That was right.
It was that night, yeah. So
Yeah.
it was on the way back back to San Fran because the 49ers play nowhere near San Francisco. They play like an hour and 20 minutes, I think south, whatever, away from San Francisco. So there was a lot of time to talk about Tyler McGill on the trip back.
Well, it's going to be a really exciting week at Citi Field. Hope to see you guys there. Look, this has been an incredible season. Let's continue it. Let's show up. Let's support the team. Follow the podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at Vito F. Khaleesi. You can follow John on Twitter at JMB9191. And like we said before, 13 games left. That series against the Braves, it's all going to come down to that most likely, but there's a lot of time in between there. Let's watch some winning baseball.